Well, hello, DCO Nation. Welcome to Deadcom Outdoors Radio. This is the show where the tide set the tone and the bite tells the story. We're diving into everything saltwater inshore kayak fishing, from lures and locations to weather, water, and winning tactics. If it helps you hook up on more fish, we're talking about it right here. So grab your paddle, check your drag, and here we go. Well, welcome DCO Nation to Deadcom Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network. My name is Chris, and guys, Happy New Year. This is the first episode of the new year. Last week's episode, I actually recorded it at the end of December. So this is the first, I guess, technically, the first episode of the new year of 2026, and I am super excited to be here talking with you guys some inshore saltwater kayak fishing. But before we jump into the show, because we've got a lot of things to cover, I'd like to invite you guys to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube. If you guys want to check out all of my long form videos of my fishing adventures that I go out and do my kayak fishing. The last video that I just uploaded, it was my top 10 most memorable catches on the water for 2025. I had a couple of PBs last year, and so those are definitely on there. And then just some memorable fish. Now, they're not all the big fish of the year. These are the ones that kind of stuck in the back of my mind that I wanted to just share and share with you guys for the end of the year wrap up. So guys, head over to Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, search Deadcom Outdoors, and we can get connected. So before we jump into the show, you guys who are watching the video over on Spotify or YouTube, you can see I'm wearing a new hat. It is the Kayak or Die hat. And I want to give a shout out to Bill over there at Kayak or Die. And he sent me a hat. I reached out to him. I've known Bill. We met, I think it was probably a couple of years ago. Just a real quick story on that. Kind of just one of those chance meetings. I went down to Charleston to fish one day, and I went to Paradise Landing, which was on the Wando River. And it was one of these days where the weathermen got it completely wrong. I remember the day like it was yesterday. They were calling for like some light winds, maybe 5-10 miles an hour. And I got down there, and it was only me and this other gentleman at the landing, and I mean the wind was blowing. It was blowing 15-20 easy. As I was looking across the river, there were whitecaps on the water, and I sat there in my truck because pretty much it's an hour and a half drive from my house down to the landing. And I sat there in the truck, and of course I was defeated. I'm like, oh man, you've got to be kidding me. I drove all the way down here. The wind is just howling. What am I going to do? Well, there was another gentleman, and he was kind of standing by his truck. He started to unload his Old Town kayak. So I kind of got out of my truck, and I was just kind of standing there. So we just kind of started chatting a little bit, and he introduced himself, Bill. Hi, my name's Bill. And I said, hey, I'm Chris. And I told him, hey, I've got a YouTube channel. I came down here to do some fishing, to shoot an episode. And he said, well, I actually have a merchandise line, and it wasn't Kayak or Die at that time. He also has another product called the Steady Stick. And the Steady Stick is basically that. It's made for the Old Town kayaks, and it is basically a rod that you attach to the pedal drive of the Old Town kayaks. It sticks straight up, and when you stand up, you can steady yourself, and basically it gives you that extra balance as you're standing up in your kayak. It's a really cool product. I'm not sponsored by Bill at all, any of that kind of stuff, but go over there, check out Steady Stick. And so he was down there to shoot a little bit of a promo video. And, so we got to talking and all that. And we've just kind of kept in touch, via Instagram. Every once in a while, I would just shoot him a message and, hey, man, hope you're doing well. And, I would follow his stuff. He would follow me when he was down at ICAST. I did all that. But, Bill started the Kayak or Die stuff and reached out to him. And he was nice enough to send me the hat. The hat and the merchandise are top-notch, high quality. I love his stuff. He sent me a couple of stickers too, which I'll show right here. I'm going to get those on my vehicles and on my kayak. And so, Bill, really appreciate you. Again, guys, I'm not sponsored by it. Bill's just a super cool, super nice guy. But go over there and check out Kayak or Die. I think it's kayakordie.com. And check out his hats, hoodies, shirts, all that kind of stuff. Support him. Small business, great guy. So, Bill, awesome job. Thank you so much. I'm going to be wearing this stuff all the time. I love it. Super high quality stuff. So, okay, let's kind of jump into today's show. I want to talk about the last time that I was out on the water. I went out last week, last Friday, and I think last Friday, I can't remember, January 2nd, whatever, January 3rd, I can't remember what it was. I went down to the Wando River. It was a beautiful day. I'd been tracking the weather, and so I wanted to go down there and do some fishing. It was going to be close to 70 degrees. It was like 68 degrees. And bottom of the tide was basically going to be right around 2 o'clock. So I wanted to be there about 10 o'clock, fish the last couple of hours of the outgoing tide and the first few hours of the incoming tide. So between, 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock was kind of my fishing window, a good, 5 to 6 hour window, and fish that bottom of the tide and kind of see what was going on. I wanted to check water temperature. I wanted to see fish activity and see what was happening. The one thing that was working against me was the night of the full moon. It was a full moon. And I don't know about you guys, but excuse me, the day of the full moon, I don't have a lot of good luck fishing the full moon. I have better luck fishing, and it seems like the bite is better a couple of days after, 2, 3, 4 days after a full moon, the bite is better. Now, if you guys have a different experience with that, please send me a message. I just know that my experience with the full moon, it just hasn't been good. But with being a weekend warrior and around the holidays, it was the only time that I could get out and fish. And so I wasn't going to waste a day. I went down and I started fishing. Fished around. I started fishing some docks as the tide was falling out. I was fishing a little Z-Man Slim Swim, and it was in white, and fished it around right on the bottom. I was using a 3/16 ounce to start out because the water depth around these docks was anywhere between 3 and 4 feet. So I wanted to make sure that I was on the bottom and dragging pretty slow. The closer I got to the bottom of the tide, right around that 1, 2 o'clock, I started throwing 1/8 of an ounce. That was plenty of weight to get me down to the bottom. And I was fishing nice and slow, painfully slow for me. I'm a power fisherman. It's hard for me to slow down. It really is. It just seems like, I slow down, then the next thing you know, I'm fishing fast, and then I gotta tell myself, Chris, slow down, drag it, pause it for 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds, and really slow this down because the fish are so lethargic. The water temperature at this time was right at 50 degrees. And the highest water temperature I got that day was 51. That was it. It didn't tick up at all, even though the air temperature got up to about 68 degrees. The water temperature really didn't climb. So, it kept those fish lethargic. So, the bottom of the tide came. I never got anything. I was still hunting and pecking around. I went south as far as I have ever been. New water, fishing some other docks and some little, I'm going to call them small flats with a lot of like oyster islands where a lot of these oyster bars were completely exposed. The bottom of the tide was actually a negative tide. So, with it being a full moon, just to kind of give you a little bit of insight of what the tide was doing, the high tide was at about 6.5 feet of water, all the way down to about a negative half a foot. So, we were moving anywhere between 6.5 to almost 7 feet of water in one tide cycle. The current movement was pretty swift going out to a negative tide. It was the bottom of the tide. There was one creek that was as far back as I could see. It was a mud flat. There was no water back there at all. That's how low the water was. So I saw no fish activity. I never caught anything. Every once in a while, I would see like a little flick of a shrimp every once in a while. So, as far as activity goes, I never saw any bait movement, around the shorelines. I saw minimal mullet jumping. I think I saw one or two mullet jumping the whole day. The big mullet, those 14, 15-inch mullet that you guys see pop out of the water. I saw them coming out of the water. But guys, it was a skunked out day. Fishing, couldn't find them. I went everywhere. I tried everything. I tried suspending twitch bait, working it real slow, letting it sink into deeper holes. Any deep holes I found, I let that, just drift down to the bottom and work through, but just couldn't find the fish. And you're going to have those days. And, I learned a lot from those days. And that's what you got to do. You got to put your time in. You got to have your butt in the seat. You got to be out on the water, and those days are going to happen. So, skunked out days, there's still good days on the water, because when I got home, I went through the day and I learned a ton. So, guys, that is the end of this first segment. Stick around. We're going to be talking some sheepshead fishing, and we're going to jump into the mailbag. I got some questions that we're going to go through. So, guys, don't go anywhere. You're listening to Dead Calm Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network. Well, welcome back, DCO Nation, to Dead Calm Outdoors. During that first segment, we kind of broke down the last fishing trip that I went out on there at the Wando River. I ended up getting skunked out, but again, those skunk days, it's a great learning experience. I actually went back and I reviewed the video of that day. And again, it was 5.5 hours of me just bobbing around fishing. But I kind of looked at my technique, where I was fishing. I pulled out Google Maps and I was like, well, maybe I should have went over here. Maybe I should have tried this. This looked like a deeper hole over here. So, the next time I go down, I'll hopefully have a better plan and be a little bit more dialed in. But, don't be discouraged by those skunked out days, because you do learn something, and that does make you a better angler. And it's I have more skunked out days, but for some reason, am I getting to be a better angler? Yeah, I am. So you just keep putting those puzzle pieces together, and eventually, you start working things out. So now another thing that I want to kind of talk about is what I'm going to be doing on Friday. So as you guys are listening to this episode, when it first drops, it drops Wednesdays at 10 a.m. So as I am recording this. I'm actually recording this Tuesday night, but I am going to be fishing Friday, and I'm going to be sheepshead fishing. Now, I have never sheepshead fished. I have never caught a sheepshead. As many years as I have been doing this, I have never targeted a sheepshead and I have never caught one. And when I tell people this, they are just like, why? Why haven't you been sheepshead fishing? I don't know. I don't know why. I just, when I go out, it seems like I have a one track mind. It's like I love catching redfish. I love sight fishing redfish, trout, flounder. I love the thump of a flounder, but for some reason, I don't target sheepshead. So I'm going out on Friday, and I want to kind of discuss what the conditions are going to be, what I'm going to be using, and then next week, I'm going to give you guys kind of an update. So this is going to be kind of a two-part, here's what I did, and we're going to talk about how the day went. So I may even, I'm thinking about doing the episode out on the water. I want to kind of see how the audio is, but I'm thinking about doing it actually on the kayak out on the water and recording the episode. But we'll kind of see how that goes. But so I'm going to go down to Charleston. There is an area that I want to fish that has all of these docks, and I have fished these docks for redfish and trout. There's a lot of old established docks. One of the things about Sheepshead that everybody keeps telling me about is the more barnacles on these pilings, the better off you're going to be, because Sheepshead will sit and chew on those barnacles. That's its food source. So I know of a ton of docks that I want to hit and target. So that's going to be the first thing. When I go down there on Friday, the tide is going to be, it's going to be a high tide right around noon. So I want to be there probably around 10 o'clock. So work, a couple of hours of the rest of the incoming tide, and then maybe a couple of hours of the outgoing tide. And it's going to be a smaller tide cycle. So it's only going to be about a 3 or 4 foot drop in tide for that day. Now, those of you in Texas, or maybe even, the Gulf coast of Florida, you may be thinking small tide cycle. We may get a foot of tide movement. Well, here in the Carolina coast, that's pretty small for us. So that last couple of hours, the current probably isn't going to be very strong. It's going to be, a slower current. So I can kind of hold myself around these dock pilings to drop down my bait. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the setup I'm going to use and the bait. So let's talk bait first. Excuse me. I'm going to be using fiddler crabs. There is a local bait shop that I use that I'm going to be swinging by and picking up some fiddler crabs. That's going to be the first thing. The second bait I'm going to use, and shout out to Captain Tanya, she's been on the show before. I reached out to her, and she also uses, besides fiddler crabs, she uses frozen mussels. So I'm going to, that's not a trade secret. She actually threw that out on one of the episodes before. So I'm not putting out anything that is a trade secret. So, but she uses frozen mussels that she gets from the local grocery store. And I'm going to grab some of those, put those into a cooler, and, try my best to kind of keep those frozen, but I'll take a few of those with me. So between the fiddler crabs and the frozen mussels, that's what I'm going to be using. And then, again, on the video, I'm holding up the hook I'm going to be using. And this is a sheepshead jig. This is from Lemon Island Fishing. I am not sponsored by them at all. It's a local guy who, down in Beaufort, South Carolina, who makes these jig heads and just absolutely does a fantastic job. Now, I don't know if you can see, I've got some writing on my hand from work because I had to make some notes. That's what I'm showing on the video. But you can see he is absolutely fantastic with those. The paint job on this, the little eye of the hook is completely clean. There is no paint inside that eye. So these jig heads are absolutely fantastic. So that's what I'm going to be using to get myself down there. Now, the only rods that I have are the ones I'm going to be using for inshore saltwater. I should probably be using maybe a smaller rod, maybe like a 6-footer. Well, I don't have a 6-foot rod. So I'm going to be using my 7-foot medium light Cash-In Icon Inshore Series rod. So that's what I'm going to be using. 10-pound braid with a 12-pound fluoro, or maybe a 20-pound fluoro, because working around these docks and all of the oyster and the barnacles, I don't want to be broke off too easy. So I may be using either a 12. If that is too light, then I'll go to maybe a 15 or a 20. I'll just have to see how it's performing around those pilings. So that's what I am going to be doing. So guys, wish me luck. It is going to be the first time I'm going to be sheepshead fishing. If you guys have any thoughts or tricks or tactics, shoot me a message on Instagram and Facebook and be like, hey, try this, give this a try. And next week, I will let you guys know. Stay tuned for part 2 next Wednesday to see how I did. So guys, let's move on to a couple of the mailbag questions that I didn't get to last week. One is I always get asked about what are my rod and reel setups that I use for inshore fishing. Well, I use really 2 different reels. I use a size 2500 and 3000 size reel. I don't use anything bigger, excuse me, for my inshore fishing. I am not targeting big bull reds, these 35, 40 plus inch bull redfish. Up into these creeks in shallow water fishing, you just don't get those bull reds. They stay offshore, they stay by the jetties. Some of the bigger redfish that you'll get up into these creeks are 30 inches. Okay, 30, 31, 32 inch and below, man, excuse me, is what you're going to get up into these creeks. You just don't need a 4,000, 8,000 size reels. That is way too big. You just don't need it. A 2,500 and a 3,000 size reel is plenty. My PB redfish is 31 inches. I caught it on a 2,500 series. It was fine. I got him in, revived her, and she kicked off just fine. I use 2 different kinds of rods. Now, they may be different rod makers, but I use a medium light fast action and a medium fast action. I like the fast action tips. They give me a little more sensitivity for my lures. With being a artificial guy, I like that sensitivity. The medium light and the medium, those are plenty. Again, I caught my PB on the medium light rod. I wasn't really targeting, big redfish. Well, you can't dictate what's going to bite on the end of that, rod. But again, took me a few minutes to get her in, got her revived. It was just fine. So I used 10-pound braid. And then my leaders, I use 12, 15, and 20-pound fluorocarbon. Okay, that's what I use. Those are my setups. Guys, it's that simple. And then I did get a question a couple of weeks ago about how often do I change out my braided line, like throughout the year? Actually, I only do it once. I pack my braid on. I don't get a lot of wind knots, anything like that. But I only change out my braid once a year. I have done it twice. So, but that's really it. I have also had guys tell me that they'll, halfway through the season, they'll take their braid, they'll unwind it onto like a paper towel tube, and then spool it back onto their reel. And basically, they flop that line. So now the line that was deep onto the reel is now the fresh line on top. Great way to recycle and get two uses out of one spool. So think about that. That's a great tip that somebody told me years ago. You guys can give that a try. So I wanted to get to those, couple of questions, but guys, that pulls us to the end of the show. And I hope you guys got something out of it. Tune back in next week to see how I did sheepshead fishing. And if you guys have any tips and tricks, let me know. Shoot me a DM. But guys, we will end it just like we always end it. I appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. And remember, conservation starts with you. Release a fish for someone else to enjoy. And you've been listening to Dead Calm Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network.